Yo, everybody, welcome to the Ford Wide Podcast. This is the official first episode. So, we had our pilot episode, which was just us laughing for about an hour and 45 minutes with no rationale. But this episode has a little bit of structure, so it's going to be pretty cool. So, our first topic is something Blake brought up, and he wanted to talk about it, even though it's kind of just a minor discussion. It really doesn't really pertain to the start of the NASCAR season. But I'm going to throw it over to Blake.
Yeah, boys. I was just curious. Didn't y'all have a chance to watch the Rolex this weekend?
I did. I got to watch some of it.
What were your thoughts on it?
Um, uh, I watched the ending and I watched like the first 3 hours. I'd say I watched of it. The ending was pretty good. I mean, it really came down to what was it, the LMP2s? That's what it came down to.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But it seemed like there was good position battles going on there towards the end. I didn't really get to see much of what happened with the NASCAR drivers that were racing though.
Yeah, when I was watching, so I watched probably probably close to 8 to 10 hours of it, and then just kind of fell asleep. I always kind of use the Rolex as kind of like an appetizer to get into the race season almost. I don't necessarily care who wins. I just kind of watch to support any of the NASCAR guys. But I was really impressed to see that Trackhouse had an entry with SVG and Connor Zilic, and I can't remember the two other guys, but I know they're towards kind of towards the later half of the first half, going into the second half of the race. Centric was actually making some gains in there, but I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think any of the NASCAR guys won. But I'm always just so impressed with how those cars. I mean, I think they have like five different sets of cars on the track, and you've got like 60 some cars that can race like 800 laps around the Daytona road course. I mean, and if you think about it, with all the elevation changes that is, like all the banking, all the tire wear, because Daytona's starting to get really kind of rough on the surface a little bit. I'm just like, wow, I'm just kind of in awe of it. And especially, go ahead. Yeah.
Not to mention, having to keep your car out of crap.
Right.
I mean, you got to keep your car out of getting in wrecks and whatnot throughout, that 24 hours, over 2,000 miles. Like, it's impressive to make it to the end.
Well, and especially like when I can't remember if it's like the GTP or whatever probably the bougiest cars are called. I can't remember that, but it's kind of like the Cup version versus like trying to go around like the equivalent of like the ARCA series cars there. Like, it's really impressive at how skilled you have to be. Even in the pit areas, Daytona is one of my favorite tracks to go to, and I talked to a couple people who usually go to the Rolex there and the 500, and they say the fan access at the Rolex is phenomenal. Like, you can go right up almost to like pit road to where they're at, and they have like pasta bars for all the drivers, and I've heard of some doing like free massages for the drivers, just trying to help them relax, and it's a whole shebang, if you will, for sure. I'd really like to end up going one year. It seems like more of an infield kind of crowd than a grandstand crowd, but I would really enjoy going one year. I don't know if I'd stay up all 24 hours, but I feel like, I feel like it would be fun.
Well, yeah, I didn't watch any of it this past year. But I tend to look at it the way you do, and I tend to try to get into it. And it gets you excited about Daytona because you're seeing Daytona for 24 straight hours. And, like the old man versus machine aspects and everything. But I've always thought, man, the perfect trip would be to drive down there early in the morning, get there in time for green flag on Saturday, right? Stay for a few hours in the afternoon, go hang out at the beach, do whatever, take a nap, I don't care. Come back in time for the 10 o'clock fireworks, stay till about 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Go back, take another nap, get some rest, check out from the hotel in the morning, come back, watch the end of the racing, and then drive on back. I mean, I feel like that would just be a very fun trip to just go and experience and take everything in. But then also to get to take in different aspects of the speedway, maybe from a vantage point that you'd never get during an NASCAR event.
Yeah, Cole and I saw the Clash in 2021. That's on the road,
The road
course.
course.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's like seeing the road course in person is pretty cool. It just to see like how they had to maneuver, how dark the infield is actually really impressive. But go ahead and say what you were going to say, Austin.
I was just gonna say, how about Penske? I mean, dominating racing. They won the Indy 500 last year, third straight NASCAR championship. Logano, Blaney, Logano, and then their Porsches. They won both the World Endurance Championship title and the IMSA crown as well. So Penske's on a run through racing right now.
Yeah. And I think one reason why they have so much success, I mean, obviously you look at like Roger Penske's career, right? But they're also really able to fund their cars well through what I think Denny Hamlin calls like B2B sponsorship. So like for all of Penske's trucks, they're only going to use Pennzoil oil to change the oil filters and stuff. Like you look at like Rick Hendrick with Hendrick cars, they're only going to use Ally to finance their cars. When they have business avenues like that, I mean, it can really help produce a dynasty in racing like Penske does. And it is really fun to see.
For sure. I think my only 2 points that I really have with the Rolex is I wasn't able to watch it, and the flip-flopping of the different channels and stuff is very frustrating for me. It really is. I understand why they have to do it, because it's a long time period, and they can't just have it on the same channel for 24 hours.
Yeah.
But to keep up with it as a fan and be like, what channel is it on? Is it online? Is it streaming? What is going on? That's kind of hard to follow for me.
I watched it all on Peacock, but that's obviously you got to have that streaming service, right?
Yeah, and I don't.
Yeah. Now, watching it on Peacock for the whole time it was really convenient because, it's like you never changed the channel, right? And they have such good commentators, too. I feel like it's such a good, almost like racing unifier because they'll bring in like Dale Jarrett, Jeff Burton, but also Lee Diffie and a lot of these other guys. And it's like, especially after this past race season on NBC, like Lee Diffie's the man.
I'm very glad they brought him back.
Mm-hmm.
He's
phenomenal.
I almost wish Fox would hire Lee Diffie for their season too, because
somebody.
Yeah,
They need energy.
Yeah,
They just need energy. And all right, so Mike Joy, I think like Hall of Fame broadcaster, no doubt in my mind. They've got to get him a better team than he has. And they put Larry Mack in the booth. Why that man is not in the booth every single week, it baffles me. That guy brings the energy. But
do y'all remember back in, I think it was 2022, where Fox had a plan with NBC to do the swap, and Dale Jr. came and helped announce for the Talladega race on Fox?
I remember that.
That was a whole nother level. That was almost like mid-2000s Fox when he was there. And I think that incident with Boyer and the incident he had, I think kind of impeded Boyer going to NBC that year. So I hate that didn't come to fruition. But having Dale Jr. and Fox, that was just backs up your point of what you were saying on. But maybe Harvick will, with it being his freshman year in the booth last year, maybe this year he'll help kind of mold Mike Joy and Boyer a little bit.
I don't even think it's a Harvick thing. I think it's just the chemistry between Harvick and Boyer, because they're two totally different personalities. And like they're trying, like you have Boyer joking, and Kevin might, he might be enjoying the joke or whatever, but he just doesn't personify it through his voice a lot. So I think that's kind of where that is an issue.
I think another issue with the Fox broadcast is, I remember one time, especially last year, something had happened on track, there was a wreck that had happened, and Boyer wanted a replay. He wanted a replay of it, and they gave him the replay, but they ended the replay before it showed what he wanted them to see. And you just hear him on camera go, well, like, that's the kind of quality we're getting with Fox, and it's terrible.
Well, and maybe I'm just playing devil's advocate here a little bit, but even like with the Daytona 500, if they had a little bit of a better super speedway car, that would help some of the excitement, because when they're just like ducks going to a pond 2x2 for most part, I can't imagine, or I bet it's probably pretty tough to come up with storylines with that.
You know, I miss the days. I miss the days when you had to fine tune, and y'all talked about the track is kind of going back to this. Like the track is getting it. I mean, when they did the repave before 2011, I mean that thing was shiny. I mean that's why they were able to do the tandem drafting the way that they did it. I mean, they just could just hook up and go, and they're not going to hit any bumps. Nothing's going to break them apart. It's getting some of that character back, and that's exciting. I miss the days where you depended on handling in a race like that, because then you have your lead pack of about 7 cars. They're going to get single file. Any one of them is capable of leapfrogging the one in front of them or teaming up and running with, maybe it's a teammate, or maybe it was about, it seems like the dynamic duo that was unbeatable in the early 2000s was Dale Jr. and Tony Stewart. And so maybe it was them, but whatever the case was. And then you had your next pack of maybe, 15 to 20 cars that all were handling about the same. Now, they would be side by side, probably weren't going to string out single file as much, but there was so much going on in those races with the strategy. And that's another thing. I'm okay with stage breaks. That's another thing we can talk about later. I think at the super speedways, you got to get rid of them, but I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot of content on that whenever Cole sees fit on that topic.
Well, I mean, next week would be an obvious time to kind of mention that, being the Daytona 500 is coming up. But so my last point on the Rolex, and we'll move on, is Blake mentioned how Cindric did, and it seemed like he did a really good job. I think Cindric is a top-tier road course racer. He may not always be up leading road course races, but he's always up front, and he's usually he's always grinding through the gears through all those turns and stuff. It's really fun to watch him. And then of course at Daytona he's really good too, because he's usually up front in the pack, because Penske's just top tier.
Well, it's like that year that you and I were at the 500, go back in 2022 when he won. I mean, he was consistently in the top 5 the whole time. Cindric was.
Yep.
And he was kind of labeled as like a surprise winner, but the way he ran that race, when you look at the pure quality of the race he ran, he wasn't a surprise winner. He did a fantastic job, and he's a great super speedway racer too.
And we were actually there when he won his Xfinity race at Daytona as well, in the Verizon 22 car.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I mean, we've seen him absolutely dominate. And then, of course, during the Clash, which we will talk about on my part of the segment, he didn't obviously win the race because Kyle Busch won that race at the Clash at the road course at Daytona, but he was up front a lot of that race, because I went back and watched that race not too long ago, and I just realized how excellent he was. And then at that point, he was very young too. So, I mean, he still is kind of young, but just in regards to his ranking, also, just a small mention is that where NASCAR's getting rid of the rookie stripes on the back of the cars, I'm kind of upset about that. I kind of like the rookie stripes.
Yeah, that's wild. I didn't believe that at first. I thought it was clickbait, and then I was like, man, they're actually doing this.
Yeah, so I'm kind of upset. Because, I mean, even with diecast and stuff, having the rookie stripes on their first year diecast, that's part of their collection card. Yeah. It's a collection value of something. Yeah. It's just kind of why? It's no big deal for them to be there. Don't see the issue. But
I guess
it is what it is.
Things, yeah.
Yeah. You got to move the car number back a little bit and up front a little bit, and then you got to take the rookies. Yeah, it's
Cole's not bitter, guys.
No, turn into all. NASCAR hadn't been the same since Dale Sr. died. So.
Okay, Boomer.
Yeah, exactly. So, a little agenda for today. We're going to talk about Clash for majority of it. Me and Blake are actually going to be able to attend the Clash, and we're going to be going to the late model race and the actual Cup race and stuff, and all the qualifiers and heat races, which we'll talk about that. That'll be part of Austin's part of his 3 wide or 2 wide. I think he's 2 wide. He is 2 wide. 100% he is 2 wide. But
I really am 2 wide.
He's 2 wide. He's 18-wheeler wide, you know what I'm saying? Wide. But a little point that I wanted to pull out is all the open drivers that are going to be, not necessarily in the NASCAR circuit all the time. And I wanted to kind of highlight those. So the number 15 of Tim Brown, number 50 of Burt Myers, and then the number 66 of Garrett Smithley. And then on top of that, we have Corey LaJoie in the one car for Rick Ware Racing. So that actually occurred after I wrote out my format, but
Is he going to be in the Clash or just Daytona?
I think. Let me look.
Yeah, I think LaJoie might just be the 500. Well, one of the open cars.
He's NASCAR's guaranteed caution. They have to have.
Oh man. Y'all talk while I look this up.
I got the entry list right here. What number did y'all say he was running?
The number one car.
He's
I believe.
01.
01.
Not in the class.
Okay.
That's
not
good.
in the class.
That's good.
So
one less caution.
That means
at least 3 less caution.
That's not what I meant, because I wanted to make sure my notes were actually up to par. So, of course, Tim Brown is a entry for Rick Ware Racing. So I guess that 15 car would be the 01 car for the 500. That, I guess, would be the same staple, essentially.
I think so.
Because Tim Brown's obviously not running
he's
a car.
Not. Yeah,
surely he wouldn't be cleared.
Yeah. So, of course, he is known for his 101 races in the modified division at Bowman Gray. So he is very much you look at him as like a specialist. You're like SVG when they called him in for the Chicago race. It's kind of the same thing. This probably would give them the best chance of winning this race. Of course, the equipment's not the top tier equipment of like a really high caliber like Hendrick or Joe Gibbs or anything. But when you put a driver like that in a car, who not only he knows Rick Ware Racing because he actually worked for them as a suspension and driveline specialist. I don't know if you guys knew that or not.
Yeah. I didn't know that till I was watching the Dale Jr. download today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I found it online because I was doing research of everybody. I haven't listened to the download here in a little bit because I just don't have time for it, because when I'm working, I can't really be listening to things at the same time when you're writing, because it's just it's a mess. And then you start writing stuff and you're like, I just wrote what Dale Jr. said about some kind of race, but so then the number 50 of Burt Myers, he is a 12-time modified division champion, a 2-time NASCAR Southern Wheel modified champion, and a 3-time Smart modified tour champion. So he kind of, he has a couple championships underneath his belt.
The only thing that I'm concerned with him is he is in the 50 car, or a Maravet. So I don't know. That's going to be probably one of the toughest cars to probably wheel. But if anybody can do it at Bowman Gray, it's going to be him.
And a little, sorry, can't go ahead.
No, I was there in 2021 and saw him clinch the modified track championship there at Bowman Gray. That was just came down to he and Tim Brown. That was just, you talk about two guys that respect each other, and have a love for the sport and a love for Bowman Gray. And so that's going to be exciting. But yeah, I was thinking, who was it? Y'all help me. In the Daytona 500 qualifying, went out in one of these cars. Was it the Money Team a couple of years ago?
Yeah, it was.
Went out on the track.
It was actually that 50 car. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Destroyed the setup on that car. It was a joke. I think, though, they somehow still made the 500.
It was a last lap pass, I believe, in the open, and it was Connor Daly driving it, I believe.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah.
It was
But
Connor.
he went out there for qualifying, and you could just tell. I can't remember if it was. The car visibly was.
It was almost like it was down a gear. It was almost like it was racing in like third gear.
Yeah, it was not.
The back bumper of that car was like cattywampus coming off that off the pit road. It was bad.
Yeah, they said, "Hey, crew chief's going to try something new here."
We're going to do a slight wedge adjustment. Slight wedge.
Slight wedge.
Yep.
And y'all, my spoilers in a different zip code.
This
It's
thing's
turned
in
upside
Myrtle
down.
Beach.
It's upside down.
That's right.
A little cool tidbit about that though is actually on the box for that number 50 car is going to be Tony Uri Jr. So
Oh,
former
man.
amazing crew chief of Dale Earnhardt Jr. So, it's a little cool callback. And I mean, honestly, when you have someone that's got that veteran presence on the box, it most definitely will help. And of course, he's been out of the sport for a while, so we'll see how it works setting up the car for him. But I mean, that's definitely a plus inside of Burt Myers.
Well, and I think if in the qualifying races, if they can just stay out of trouble, a lot of the guys who are fighting for that transfer position will be beating the heck out of each other. And a lot of times you can just slide right in, 2 laps, 1 lap to go, and you're secured in. So he could make it. I think it might be tough for him, but I mean, don't count him out by any means.
I mean, they're veterans of the track at least, so I mean, they'll just cut through the middle of the infield, right? That's what most people do.
If that happens, dude, I'm telling you, it's
Hey,
gonna
look,
be.
under
it's go-
caution, all they got to do is just drive to the front, clean out whoever the leader is, and they get to go.
You want to talk about like a 1979 Daytona 500 moment for NASCAR? It might just come at Bowman Gray this week, boys.
It will be there for the
It
history.
will be there.
Have y'all all been to this track
Yes.
to
I
see
have.
a race?
I
Yeah.
have not. I have not.
To Austin, you have not. So,
No.
I mean, it really, and you can tell when you just look at a picture of the track, you can just tell you cannot pass on this track without making contact.
It's more
There's
pequeño.
got to be contact of some time. So when we get to our picks later on, that has a lot to do with who my pick's going to be. That probably just gave it away.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but anyways,
Florida
but
Joey.
Austin Dillon.
came in like a
Yep.
wrecking ball. Anyways,
Oh,
yeah, Austin
boy.
Dillon. But you're gonna have to be completely okay with using up that chrome horn. That's gonna be fun. That's gonna
Yeah.
be fun.
Absolutely. And of course, I don't want to forget to talk about Garrett Smithley. Of course, not, as prestigious of a career at Bowman Gray, but still a driver that's been on the NASCAR circuit, I believe ARCA and just multiple different teams at the cup level a couple of times. So he'll be driving for Garage 66, which was formerly MBM Motorsports. So they actually have run in NASCAR a couple of times at the top division. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do in that car. I think that will be the car that was struggling the most out of the other two. I feel like that's because at least with them, they have a veteran presence, so they know how to get around the track. Garrett Smithley, I can't say I've ever seen Garrett Smithley at Bowman Gray Stadium. He might have been there, but
I know when I've been there, I think William Byron's been there. I
Yeah.
think Larson's ran, and I'm sure I'm missing a few others. But
Chase Elliott has run it. And I was trying to think of some other ones.
I feel like
And
Christopher
really-
Bell should have run it if he hasn't yet. That'd be a
Run
great,
there.
yeah, it'd be a great track for him to run at because he's really good at short tracks.
I know Larson, Byron, Hamlin. I know they've raced there.
So it'll be very interesting to see, and I wish all three of the open drivers great luck. It's gonna be fun to watch you guys in y'all's heat races, and hopefully they end up in the heat races are based upon speed, if I remember right. So it'll be kind of interesting to see where they end up lining up, but I think it also has a lot to do with what heat race they get into because you have the different ones. So if they end up all in the same heat race together, it's gonna be a lot harder. But if they're in split heat races, there's a better chance at least one or two of them making it. So
and I think only 23 guys make the show on Sunday
Yeah,
night.
we'll talk about that later.
I
That's
got you.
that's Austin stuff. I don't want to take it away from him
Okay,
because
I got
he spent time doing it, you
Yeah.
know,
I got you.
like other people.
Yeah.
But yeah. The last point of the agenda before we start getting to our wide segments is I would say that the demand for tickets for this event was absolutely unprecedented. It was wild. Blake can actually tell you the firsthand experience of trying to get these tickets, but it just shows not necessarily wasn't a marketing ploy by NASCAR, but they knew that this place was going to sell out by the amount of seats that they had. They knew the capacity was listed at 16,000. So they knew, as much as people in North Carolina like NASCAR, and they're bringing this legendary Madhouse into the Cup schedule. And of course, not regulation schedule, but just expedition. Lewis and Clark, everybody.
Sacagawea.
Yeah. But bringing this was very much a smart marketing decision for NASCAR, and of course, I'll talk about this in my segment. But it's really cool, and I'm also really looking forward to attending the Madhouse Classic, which will be partnered with Advanced Auto Parts. 125 lap race, invite only, with modifieds. It's going to be absolutely wild.
Do we know if any Cup drivers are racing in that?
I've not heard anything about any Cup drivers racing in it,
Okay.
and I feel like that would be something that would be mentioned. There might be a couple of names from like maybe like Hocevar or other teams that have not had a lot of on-track time, maybe. Or there might be an instance where I know the data and stuff wouldn't necessarily translate for the late model or the modified cars to the Cup cars, but if they're able to exchange like how the track like wears going on with regards to the cars and stuff, they can share that data. They might be able to alliance with one of those teams or something. I'm not sure how it works, to be honest with you.
They're not televising that one, are they?
I think it's on Flow, but not
It's on Flow.
but not like big networks or anything.
Because I know last year they did the NASCAR Mexico race after the Clash, and I know Daniel Suarez raced in that one, so I was just curious.
Yeah, I think that it is on Flow, and I would recommend anybody that if they do have the extra funds, Flow is a great investment because I mean you can watch racing all the time. I mean there's late models, dirt, all kinds of stuff. I think I even seen once they had like boat racing on there. And Flow's not necessarily only racing too, because they got all kinds of other sports that they showcase on there. It's just not on the racing side of the app.
So Ryan Preece and Bobby Labonte will be in the Madhouse Classic.
So Bobby Labonte obviously is just kind of doing it for the funsies, but Preece would be doing it for the seat time.
Right. And, I mean, obviously, like Tim Brown and Burt Myers will be in there, right? Two of the more mainstream guys people might know more is, Labonte and Preece.
Labonte will probably be sponsored, like he has been in the past, by Cookout, who is the sponsor of the race. So, I saw Labonte race there one time. It was cool getting to see someone that I got to see race in my childhood kind of on the track again. It was neat.
It was kind of like when Wilkesboro first opened and they had the modified race there. I mean, you had to see Ryan Newman win that thing after watching what we did in the 2020 Daytona 500, to see him race in real life and win, that was a special night. But also to see people like Bobby Labonte and folks like that. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying there. You're right on.
Yep. So I would also like to mention in regards to the ticket sales and stuff, I'll go ahead and throw that over to Blake so he can kind of give you the insight about how of a fiasco it was to get tickets. We won't talk about like the back end of other stuff that we had going on where we're able to secure something else, but just on like the pure fan side of trying to call in and get tickets for this event, how was it, Blake?
It was a little bit stressful at first because, it's right here local to at least Cole and I, right? But thankfully, and this is something I really encourage a lot of NASCAR fans to do, really kind of get to know, not like personally, but get to talk to like your NASCAR ticket sales representative. And it really does pay off because he messaged us and was like, hey, would y'all like pre-sale access? And we're like, absolutely. So, that is one thing I will say in the last probably 5 to 6 years, I've seen NASCAR do a really good job of. I think ever since they bought ISC, is they really reach out to their ticket holders really, really well, and that's how we got ours. So it was kind of a little bit of like a luck of a draw, but I'm not complaining. I'm excited about it.
I would also say that most of the time they're usually centered around a specific track. I can't speak today. I know I have a one that contacted me after I got my infield camping spots at Talladega, and they like he like constantly emails me and stuff, which is great. But I don't talk. I've never talked to him, but that's because I got Blake on the back end, kind of doing everything.
That's
So
that's what I'm here for, man. That's what
that's
I'm here
right.
for. Look, that guy, it'll be a 6-7 month out race, and I'm only going to talk to him about buying tickets for one race, and that guy will talk me into buying tickets to about 2 or 3 races. I mean, it's dangerous, but it's but now I got to run it by my wife, so there's a little bit more better accountability for that now.
Nah, you don't have to run it through nobody. Separate bank accounts.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, my friend.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I know that me and Blake were talking before the podcast started, and like he told me, is like, yeah, my wife's glad that we started this podcast. I'm like, it's probably so you can get you out of the room for like an hour and a half. Like,
Regardless, I'm enjoying being here with y'all boys.
it's been great.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the one episode that we've done together so far. It's been great.
It's been a great journey, man.
Yeah, so we're in it to win it, right?
Yeah.
Alrighty, so this is where we're going to start the iconic 100% genuine, never done before, as far as I know, 4-wide segment. So I've talked about this in the pilot episode, but if you guys were not able to listen to it, go ahead and listen to it because you're at least going to laugh once. I can guarantee it. And mostly it's probably due to stupidity or just listening to Blake cackle like
Stop
a hyena.
Whatever you were doing and listen to that podcast right
No,
freaking now.
No. We want them to listen to this one. They listen to this one first, then they can go back and listen to the other one.
Hey, also, while we're talking about it, shout out to our 18 listeners we had. We were shooting for 2, and we had 18. So, thank y'all.
We got a homeboy or a homegirl in Ecuador, so thanks for listening.
Shout out to Quito.
Oh my
Assalamu
God.
alaikum.
Boy, but it's kind of funny because Blake is like, our goal is to be able to count our listeners with our toes. Well, I mean, we're basically out of toes at this point. Like, it's getting close. We're going to have to start borrowing people and counting with their toes. So,
If we were Deion Sanders, we'd be screwed because he's missing like 3 toes.
You know, that's I didn't know that. It's a little nugget of information.
it'd be like, I don't know if you guys ever watched Game of Thrones or read the books or whatever of Ice and Fire, but there's a guy, they call him the Onion Knight, and he used to be a smuggler. Onion! But,
Was he crying all the time?
No. So essentially, there was a blockade where, I hate to mess this up for all the people that are like hardcore into of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, but essentially there was a blockade of where they weren't able to get food, and he was able to smuggle food into a kingdom, and he got knighted for it. But where he was a smuggler, the lord of the house, I guess, was like, well, I'll give you the knighthood, but we're going to chop him fingers off because you're smuggling, so therefore you're stealing. So it's like a whole honor thing. But when he mentioned Deion Sanders and the no toes, he's like, Sir Davos, the Onion Knight. Austin, I hope you know that this is actually going to go up in video format, so they'll be able to see it this time.
I know. I don't care. I'm not doing anything bad.
Not yet. So the 4-wide segment. So essentially, we're going to throw it to each guy and their specialization of kind of like what we talked about. And I usually do it just based upon like what I feel is like dire and just kind of go like a chronological order. And if there's anything that's chronological, that should be number 1, number de uno, it should be the history. And of course, our national historian Kent's about to give us the lowdown about, I don't know, because it's the first time we ever been at Bowman Gray.
Get your popcorn.
So, there's not obviously a whole lot to be able to go off of. So I'm going to pull a little bit from Bowman Gray history. I'm going to pull a little bit from just the Daytona, just the class history in general. I was looking at this statistic. 6 times the winner of the clash at Daytona. So again, not necessarily including the past a couple of classes, but the class at Daytona 6 times. The winner of the class at Daytona has gone on to win the Daytona 500. Can y'all name any of those drivers?
Dale Earnhardt.
RSV. Sorry.
Yeah, it just won with me.
I was about to say, like,
believe it or not, so Dale Earnhardt, you would think, right?
Yeah.
But he would have had to have won the class in '98 to make that happen because he only had one Daytona 500, and he did not. He did not. So actually, it happened 6 times, but there were only 5 drivers.
Was Tony Stewart one of them?
He was not.
Huh. Okay.
Jeff Gordon, maybe.
Jeff Gordon did it once in 1997.
Of course, Kent's like, Jeff
I'm
Gordon's on the
thinking, hey,
list.
look,
I'm putting the stats
look,
down.
24 hat is on. You know, I'm not going to pretend I'm not biased.
You sicko.
What about
no.
Dale Jarrett?
Dale Jarrett, he's the only man that did it twice, in '96 and in 2000.
Get on my level, boys.
Y'all got the 3 others? One of them was a little bit more recent. One was in the last decade.
Top tier equipment or mid equipment? Top tier
tier.
equipment. Okay.
Now, you don't have
it's
to.
not Dale Jr., is it?
But Denny
No,
Hamlin?
it wasn't Dale. Denny Hamlin won it in 2016.
Okay.
And then I'm just going to go ahead and give y'all the other 2. Bobby Allison in '82 and
Go.
Bill Elliott in '87.
Rest in peace to Bobby Allison.
Bill.
And so, you know, a lot of people, and I remember, you know, growing up watching this race, I remember thinking, you know, man, if you win this race, you got a shot, you know, you're going to be good in the Daytona 500. And then you forget, like, now early on, you did have accounts of people who, hey, look, their Clash car, that was also their Daytona 500 car. And you don't mess that car up. You're not even racing. You're going out there, you're parading it around at, you know, 190 miles an hour for 20 laps. Because, and so that's one thing to kind of bring up too. So the format through the years, just to kind of, you know, look at the way that this thing has been run. When the Clash began in 79 all the way up until the 90s, it's just a 20 lap shootout. I don't know. I'm not for just shorting races for shorter races' sake. But you have to admit, it makes for a good race. I mean, you drop the green flag, it is go time. And so, anyways, and then they started breaking it up into segments after that through the years, and it became a little bit longer. Eventually, it turned into a 70-lap event, 75-lap event. I remember watching in 2012 Jeff Gordon sliding down the front stretch on the side of his car for what looks like about 1,000 yards or so. And that was crazy before barrel rolling to a stop.
Was that the same year that Kyle Busch had his like wicked save and went
So
going on to
Gordon was in second. He was pushing. Well, that was the year. So remember in 2011, they tandem drafted like crazy. They would just lock bumpers and go. 2012, they tried to put an end to that because a lot of fans didn't like it. I'll be honest with you. I kind of liked it. That might make me a dud. I don't know, but I liked it.
Okay,
but a lot of fans, thank you. A lot of fans hated it. A lot of fans hated it, so they were trying to get rid of it and bring back the traditional pack racing. Well, there at the end of that race, Kyle Busch is in the lead. Gordon is in second, and he is just leaning on Kyle. And the way that they had these cars set up with the arrow, if you put the majority of the force of your front bumper on the left side of that back bumper of the car in front of you, they're going to turn. Kyle had a save earlier in the race. This was the one that he spins, saves it, has to come all the way from the back, then winds up winning the class. That was just a absolutely incredible. I mean, I sat there as a Jeff Gordon fan, mad at the world. But you know, that was just, the man needs a 500. That's all we'll say.
Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch.
So, anyways, but yeah, I mean, the history of the Clash has always, you know, or has never I could say, really been a story of how the Daytona 500 is going to go. Even though early on they were going to be running 9 times out of 10, they're going to be. I mean, they didn't go to Daytona with, especially like they did, up until the next gen era. I mean, you went to Daytona with about 6 cars. I mean, you brought the whole shop with you to Daytona. I mean, you had so many backups and so many backups for. I mean, you were ready to go, and that was obviously not the case there in the 80s, especially in '79. And so, these guys they're putting this car on the track, and it's like, hey, look, let's go shake the rust off, and let's get going. So, anyway, but. That's kind of what I had pieced together about the Clash, just some things to kind of get excited about. One thing that I was thinking about recently in 2021, and y'all, I didn't research this, so y'all correct me if I'm wrong. 2021 was the year that Eric Jones won it with a duct tape car.
That was in 2020.
Thank you.
Yeah.
2020. 2021 was the road course.
Yeah.
So 2020, Eric Jones wins that race. And I think that was, I think when they decided to even move it to the road course and then move it from the road course to the short track, obviously, I mean, how many cars finished that 2020 race? Like 4? I mean, there were not many cars.
I remember that race was so boring until about the last 8 laps.
And then you saw 26 cars wadded up.
Yeah. And it was just a crap shoot after that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was terrible.
And so this is what happens when you say no points are involved. You're racing for a trophy, some bragging rights, and some money. Like, that's all that you're racing for. They're going to wad it up every single time. I mean, just every single time. And so I think the owners probably had a lot to say in moving it to a short track. And so I was looking, a lot of people immediately are like, man, you're just moving it from, it's around one football field to another football field. It's going to be the same thing. It's not going to be the same way. The banking, for example, is going to be vastly different even. And so like, I was looking at the banking for, last year's race, and it was like 2%, 2.5, something like that degree, banking, and it was just not much. You know what it is at Bowman Gray? Do y'all know the banking right off the top of your head?
I'd say probably at least 6 to
I would
7.
say Austin. I would say Austin would know because he looked up the specs of the racetrack. Is this true, Austin? You're muted.
I know. I couldn't really find much on the banking of the track, to be honest. So,
All right, Kent, inform
All
us.
right, here you go. That's a goose egg.
yeah, that's what
There
I thought.
is no banking.
That's what I thought.
There is
yeah.
no banking.
Huh.
at
It flat.
Bowman Gray. It is flat. And so like I
Like
said
the
before,
Earth,
I mean,
it flat.
Okay, Boomer.
oh man.
It flat.
Next he's going to try to convince us that man actually walked on the moon.
That's
So-
funny. I believe in the moon.
Oh boy, it's
I won't meet him.
it's like he's dying. It's the meme of the guy that put. Gosh, I
Poor
watched him
kid.
die.
He is dead.
Or like they go up to the lady and like, who was the first person that walked on the moon? And she like names a jazz player, Louis Armstrong, and it cuts to Louis Armstrong on the moon, like trying to sing, but he's like struggling to breathe.
Touching that. Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Anyway.
But that's oh boy.
So let's talk about Bowman Gray though, and some of the history there. I found this fascinating. So in 2011, of course I'm going to bring Jeff Gordon into this. In 2011, I went to Atlanta Motor Speedway, and I went there on a Sunday afternoon. I was so excited to watch the night race in Atlanta with my dad. Like, it was my birthday present, there in September, and so I'm headed there, and I'm so excited for this race. We get there, and the bottom falls out of the sky. I mean, it is raining torrential downpour.
Sound like the Coke 600
I know.
every time I go.
And at Wilkesboro at the truck race this past year.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my word! Yeah, that was crazy.
That was horrendous.
Me and Blake can
And
talk
so-
about that one like sometime in the future.
That'll be our
whenever-
Wilkesboro episode.
I mean, there
we
are
have
pictures
stories.
and videos of just people loading up tires and they're just floating them across the water, and that's just wild. But anyway, so but we get there. I mean, it's raining like crazy. So my dad and I, we walk outside the track. We're going, there's always, if you have not been to the track, you got to go. I mean, you just got to go. There's always some good stuff going on outside the track, just the fan engagement, everything to do. There's so much free stuff to enjoy and to do. But then also there's, the merchandise. I mean, it's just everything there. I mean, it's a fun scene. I mean, it's like the fair coming to town. I mean, it's great stuff. So we're walking around, and then we're walking back past, and we see, or we heard an engine start. And so my dad and I looked at each other. Oh my goodness. Like starting the race, because they had dried up for a little bit. And we're like, man, they might be like, they might have just started engines. And so we start running back. Well, it was a show car. It was a Jeff Gordon drive-to Unger Chevrolet. That's how I knew he was getting close to the end of his career, is when AARP showed up on his first seat. Man, maybe that's a sign of the end of the time. But anyway, so we get to, we get to the car, and we're like, oh man, I guess we don't have to hurry back. Well, then we hear the national anthem. We start running again. Anyways, we get there. Long story short, rains out. Race completely rains out. But I'm like, that's okay. It's Labor Day weekend. I got no school on Monday. Let's go. Rains the whole day. They're going to race it right about the time I go to English class on Tuesday. And so I'm just bummed. I'm upset. I'm frustrated at the world. And as I'm getting ready to go to I'm getting ready to finish up and go to my first class of the day there at school, they come over the intercom and talk to the teacher, say, Kent's dad is here to pick him up. And I'm like, no way.
Let's go.
No way. Dad just came through clutch, right? So he's sitting there. I jump in the front seat of the car, and so we had a dress code at our school. Like, you had to wear a polo shirt, tucked in the jeans, the whole nine, and so I'm wearing all this stuff, and I jump in the front seat of the car, and Dad tosses me my Jeff Gordon hat, and I look in the back seat, and he's got a, t-shirt and shorts, in the back seat for me to change into. I'm like, best dad ever. Let's go. We're going through the race. We get there. The race had already started, but we get to see the last, 2/3 of the race or so. Jeff Gordon was his 85th career win. Historic. Third all-time by himself on NASCAR's all-time win list. But now, there is another 85-time winner in NASCAR. Because there's a win that just recently NASCAR began to recognize.
Yep.
Bobby Allison is now an 85-time winner. And so you can get into, there were two types of cars that were raced in that race in 1971. There was a souped up, for lack of better terms, there was the souped up cup car, right? It's going to be a little bit bigger. It's going to be a whole lot faster. It's going to be a good bit heavier, but much bigger engine. So in theory, this is the car that's going to have the advantage on your intermediate track. But Bobby Allison was smart enough to realize it wasn't going to have the advantage on a quarter-mile track. So Bobby Allison trades in his big vehicle, and he drove a Ford Mustang. A Ford Mustang, first generation. And he won that race in a Ford Mustang, 1971. Richard Petty wasn't too happy about that. Probably because he finished second.
You ate first, you last.
Okay,
Right.
No, that's
and
Ricky Booby.
Kelly Austin has a catch. And so Richard Petty wasn't too happy about that. Filed a complaint with NASCAR officials, and NASCAR made a decision, hey, we're not going to recognize this win from Bobby Allison. And then they went back, of course, this past year, and they nailed it down. Said, yes, Bobby Allison won, and so, I think that was the right thing to do. I mean, Richard Petty, you got 200 wins. It'll be okay, bud. You're going to be all right.
7 championships.
7 championships. I don't think they're going to take the crown from you for this one, Mr. the King. So, anyways, but I mean, you just talk about, I mean, NASCAR, can y'all imagine a race today where they just kind of are like, yeah, wasn't really fair. Well, you just ain't going to have a winner tonight, boys. I mean, we went about 20 minutes after Martinsville, not knowing who the fourth driver in the playoffs were, was going to be, and Twitter about fell apart.
We went a
Or
whole
X,
week.
excuse me.
Man, you're bringing back some trauma for Cole right there, man. That boy was pissed.
No, Lord.
I
Anyways.
was too.
So, anyways, but still, can you just imagine the kind of outbreak, get to an end of the race? But can you also imagine NASCAR putting, Cup and Xfinity cars on the track for the same race? But really, this was probably more like putting a Cup car on the same track as a late model. I mean,
Wow.
there was a pretty decent difference in not just the size of engine. I mean, the car that Bobby Allison was driving had a much smaller engine than what Petty was running, but it being a little bit more lightweight, it having, Allison didn't need to make big speed going down the straightaways, because by the time your foot got halfway to the floorboard, you're on the brakes again. And so there's just no point in it. So definitely a really, really just neat piece of history. So Bobby Allison, 85-time winner. Of course, it wasn't long after they declared that Bobby Allison passed away. And so, I mean, you just talk about a legend, absolute legend in the sport of NASCAR. And he's going to be missed big time. But what a race. I mean, just to think about just everything that went into it, and having the different types, which that was a common thing back then. This was not uncommon. But I also like that when you look back at the races that were run here, I mean, they would run, I mean, from at least 59 to 63, I mean, they ran 3 races a year at Bowman Gray. Now, they also weren't going out west or anything like that. They weren't doing anything crazy with their schedules back in the day. They kept it pretty much in the southeast. But there's a lot to be said. And I'll just kind of leave off with this as we get ready for the class. This race, this class is not going to be, this may not be the best race that you've ever seen. No, I mean, I've been to this track really, I mean, the reason that the Madhouse is a fun place to watch a race is because you're watching a bunch of people who absolutely lose their minds when they make contact with each other. And Robin's racing and it just absolutely gets insane. You're probably not going to see that from NASCAR's best that night. Now, you might. I could be completely wrong. And if so, this Daytona 500 is going to have more viewers than it's had in a very long time. They might come out swinging. That would be cool. But I just don't know that the racing is going to be, you're not going to sit there and go, man, that's the best race I ever saw. I hope you do. But knowing how this car operates on smaller tracks, it's probably not going to be the case. But I will say this. NASCAR returning to Bowman Gray for the class is not about a great racing product. It's about returning to its roots and giving the local fan base in North Carolina specifically something that they have earned. The ones who are still watching NASCAR, the ones who are still absolutely bought into the sport, that have been there a lot of them have been there from the start. Maybe not all of them, but the ones who have lived their whole life as fans of this sport, who watched NASCAR leave their hometowns. Now they're getting to say, hey, I get to go watch a race in Wilkesboro this year. I get to go watch a race at Bowman Gray this year. I get to go watch a race at Rockingham this year. NASCAR's showing some love to the fans that have stuck around for all these years. That is what this is all about. And I am 110% here for it. And I'm praying that this is a success.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Blake?
I fully agree with what you said, because I know just talking with some people who were kind of like that old school fan who just not really much into racing anymore. You know, they feel like
Your
Boomers.
yeah, they feel
That did turn out real good.
They don't feel like they left NASCAR so much as NASCAR left them. Now, whether that's true or not, that's up for personal debate. I'm not going to comment one way or another, but I feel like there has been a little bit of a resurgence in that old school fan a little bit, and it's really been good. Like like you said, call my dad for example. I mean, he's not like vehemently against racing, but he did start to lose a little bit of interest there, probably around the car tomorrow age, Gen 6 age. But now that they're bringing like Wilkesboro, I mean, when I told him that Wilkesboro was coming back, his face just lit up like, wow, really? And I'm like, yeah. And he was the same way with the Clash. And so you are spot on in what you said.
That's how my family was with Rockingham. Because Rockingham's near my neck of the woods. So NASCAR coming back to Rockingham, that's a big deal.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kent, for the history lesson. We definitely took in a lot of information there. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate hearing everything about it. And like I said before, rest in peace to Bobby Allison, one of the best NASCAR legends out there, and also a fantastic person. Would always take time to sit down, talk, sign autographs and stuff. Just a true spokesman of the sport, and you will be definitely missed. With that, we're going to move on to the second wide segment with Austin, who's going to talk about the specs of the track, the differences with the former Clash being at Daytona, and anything else relative to that fact. So go ahead and take the floor, Austin.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously we talk about this year, the Clash moving from the LA Coliseum to the home of the good old Winston-Salem State Rams, Bowman Gray Stadium. So what are the differences between these two tracks? Well, the tracks are both the same distance, a quarter of a mile. Both can fit within a football stadium, and both have absolutely zero banking. But there are subtle differences. The track layout for the LA Clash, if you watch the LA Clash in the Coliseum, the corners were pretty sharp. The corners are very sharp, almost like a paperclip, almost even sharper than a paperclip at some point. It was just kind of really sharp, and then the other side kind of bowed. Meanwhile, the corners at Bowman Gray, in my opinion, from what I've seen of the track, are not as sharp. They're not as sharp. They're more rounded, and I think that could lead to more opportunities for passing and a hair more room than the Coliseum. As Kent was saying earlier, it is one of those tracks where you're not going to leave that place with a clean bumper. So that is something to take into consideration. I won't get too much into the fan aspect of it, but there will be significantly less in attendance at the Coliseum, or at the Bowman Gray, as opposed to the Coliseum. Bowman Gray holds 16 to 17,000. The Coliseum held between 40 to 50,000, so a significant number less. But the fan experience should be considerably better. One thing that I wanted to mention was last year, NASCAR made headlines for how they bought Clash last year. If you remember, the Clash was supposed to be held on Sunday, but there was a call for heavy rain. And so NASCAR made a really dumb move, in my opinion, and pushed the race up on Saturday. That really ticked off fans, because if you're going to LA to watch the Clash, if you get tickets, you're not expecting for the race to be pushed up. If anything, you're expecting it to get pushed back. And so that significantly hurt the attendance of the LA Clash. And it costs NASCAR a lot of money to do the LA Clash. For them to get everything set up in the Coliseum, it's over $1 million to get the track paved, to get the walls put up, and to just get everything ready for the event. Meanwhile, the only thing that was necessary for Bowman Gray was to put up some appropriate walls. So getting into the format for the Clash is fairly similar to last year. So there will be 3 practice groups that will get 3 practice sessions. The fastest lap times from that final practice session will determine the order for the heat races. So whoever has the fastest lap time in their respective group will have the pole for their heat race. There will then be 4 25-lap heat races. The top 5 from each heat will advance into the main Clash. This will all happen on February 1st, Saturday, February 1st. February 2nd, the night of the Clash, we will have a last chance qualifier. This is a 75-lap heat race. Only green flag laps count. no overtime, with everyone who didn't make it into the clash the day before. The top 2 from that race will advance into clash. Then there is one more spot available, 23rd spot. We have 22 spots up to now. Then there is the 23rd spot that is available. This final spot goes to the driver who in 2024 finished the highest in point standings, but did not make it into the clash off of their finishing position. Then we get to the actual clash, the part we're all excited for. The one change from last year's clash to this one. Last year's was 150 laps around the Coliseum. This one is 200 at Bowman Gray. Only green flag laps count. Of course, caution laps do not count towards that 200. And there will be a race break at lap 100. And the race must finish under green as per all NASCAR races. It must finish under green. So, a slight difference. I know last year, I mean, you think 150 laps around a quarter-mile track, that's not a long race, but when you take into account how many cautions occur, and, the saying, cautions breed cautions, the Clash was a pretty long race last year. It was a pretty long race. For a 150 lapper, it's pretty long. So it may be a long night. But what to expect? Temperature is going to be in the 40s at the drop of the green flag. What should be interesting is the surface. I won't get too much into that because I know Blake's going to cover that here in a minute. But the surface was repaved in 2022. But even though it has been recently paved, it had to go under some repair fixes to fix some issues with the track. Even since then, this isn't a freshly paved track like we see with LA each year. So that could bring some interesting aspects to it. But my question for you guys is, pairing the Clash the last 2 years at LA, we have a good sample. Do you guys expect there to be much of a difference in quality of racing from the LA Clash to Bowman Gray?
I think I don't know that you'll be able to have your complete dive bombs like you saw out at LA because of how, like you said, more well-rounded the corners are. They could right at the start of the corner, but mid-corner, I don't know that that'll be really too much of a thing. I don't see much difference personally in my prediction.
I think it depends more or less on what you consider it to be higher quality racing. So do I think that they're going to be able to pass super easy? No. I mean, in the next gen era, short tracks, it's a nightmare in regards to passing. But if you enjoy seeing cars beat and bang against each other to get people to be just a little bit loose, if that's high quality racing, then I think this track will have more high quality racing than the LA Coliseum. And that's just because of kind of the stigma that goes around this track. These drivers are going knowing that the Madhouse is not a Daytona. It's not Richmond. It is a entertainment venue. It's like you're going to a concert, but instead of music, you're seeing cars absolutely beat the snot out of each other to see who can end up being the one car that wins that night. So I think that, yes, I think it will be higher quality racing in regards to your short track racing stigma, but will it be better package wise than the LA Coliseum? It'll probably be a minimal difference.
Here's a question I'll throw out to y'all on that. The Clash out at LA did not really have an infield much. I mean, it was paved, the part that you could just go in on, get your car fixed, whatnot. But Bowman Gray is just grass. So I don't know if do y'all think they could slide fast enough for splitters and spoilers to be damaged if something happens like that? Or do you think
it might depend on if it rains the day before or something like that, if the ground is holding a lot of saturation,
it is supposed to rain the day before.
I think there's
a chance.
It's 30% chance of rain on the race day as well, for what I've seen.
Yeah, it's kind of, I've seen a lot of different stuff, but I do know I think the last thing I saw on Friday, it was supposed to rain, and it ain't going to be very warm this week either. So I'm sure it'll probably stay wet.
Yeah.
So,
and then going back to the question about the racing, that sort of thing, the track is so narrow. It almost doesn't look like there's room to hardly put two cars next to each other on that track. And so with that and with the more drawn out corners, I think you're going to see guys that try to make the dive bomb at the beginning of the corner and just absolutely use up. You're going to have people using the left side of their competition car as their brakes, essentially, I think, halfway through the corner. So I definitely think, I think it'll start off a little calm, and then you're going to have people that get that sense of urgency at different points throughout the race, and they're going to realize, yeah, I'm going to have to put the bumper to them if I want to go anywhere. And that's what it's going to get good.
I wonder if, I know they're not going to be like in fifth gear, right? But I wonder if they'll be downshifting any in the corners.
It may be a gear.
Maybe a gear, but
you don't want to change it too much.
No. And so if they're able to stay in the same gear, I think it might help out a little bit. That's my prediction. If y'all disagree, feel free to say.
No, I agree. I think you look at how short of a track is. It's you're barely touching the throttle
right
before you're having to ease off and hit the brake to get into the corner. So yeah, I don't see them having a gear change much at all.
That helps on short tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I think also it's going to be dependent on like the true like ambition of the driver that wants to win this race. So from a team ownership standpoint, like the Clash is just an expedition race. Like of course you're going to make money off of it, but it's not, the All-Star race. You're not winning $1 million when you win this race. You're not getting points. But to say that you won the race that may be the only race, we don't know what they're going to do in next year. I'm going to assume, since it's a sellout, they're probably going to bring back the Clash at least one more year, but that's just a guess. How prestigious this event could be in NASCAR history, and they might want to say, hey, I was the driver when they brought back the Clash to win at the Madhouse. So I feel like that's going to have a big part also in the racing that you see.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if somebody like a Kyle Busch, who's been on a winless streak, if they need some momentum, I could see somebody like him using a few bump and runs to get a win and try to set the tone early for his team for the 2025 season.
That'd be definitely like vintage Rowdy. Like back in the 18 car.
Oh
but
yeah.
I don't know if I see veteran 8 Kyle Busch doing the same thing.
I could see somebody like Noah Gragson would, though.
Oh, absolutely.
He's a fan favorite, and he wouldn't mind doing something like that.
Well, starting out with a new car, new number, iconic number, it'd be a good way to set the tone for the season for him. But like, my thing with Kyle is like, he's a veteran at this point, and he knows that people look at him and know that he has to hold like a certain aspect of racing. He's not Mark Martin, like prestigious, like everybody play along, But in regards to like when he was pushing Harrison Burton for that Daytona win, like he could have flat out just right hook Burton and won the race, like easy. He could have done it, but he didn't. So I don't know if he'll. I don't expect anybody to right hook anybody, but I feel like there will be a driver out there that will be willing to do that just to get this win. And I don't see it being Kyle Busch.
Or a severe dive bomb, kind of like you saw at Richmond this past year. I could see something like that happen a lot. And I don't mean to be facetious, Austin.
Yes, he does.
I would never. But
he's like, I'm going to work in how many times I can mention Richmond on the podcast.
Best 2 laps of that race ever. But yeah, I could.
Okay, Boomer.
That ought to be the title of this episode. Okay, but
I got you guys.
Yeah, but I could see a lot of that happening.
All right.
Why not? It's not like you can be penalized point. I don't think.
I was really doubted for an exhibition race, but I agree. I think it's going to be I mean, we saw last year in the LA Clash, like in an exhibition race, people were getting upset with each other. I can't pass this guy. Why can't I pass this guy? This guy just used me up. We heard all of that from the drivers in the break, and then at the end of the race, they were talking about that. So I think it's well within the realm of possibilities that we see some hotheads. I mean, we have plenty of them.
Well, and I think, and this is going to kind of bleed over into what I'm talking about, but with like you talked about, Austin, with that was perfect timing.
There he goes. Kent has that saved on his phone, so whenever he's having a bad day, he can just pull it up.
Remind myself that
So
sometimes Joey Logano gets wrecked instead of doing the wrecking.
So for the people that are not watching the YouTube version on the video form, Kent pulled out. Nice. He pulled out the Richmond last lap where Logano got absolutely plowed into, and then Hamlin got plowed into. But
are you sure his car just didn't get stuck? His gear didn't get stuck there?
Hey, it might have. Of course, Austin being the prestigious, humble person that he is, he pulled up a picture of Joey Logano pointing at his champion thing, which William Byron doesn't have yet.
Mm-hmm.
But
probably won't
good
have
thing
it for a while. But
good thing Blake mentioned what he's going to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and move it over there so we can get scooting.
Well, and talking about, I mean, and this really goes back to the quality of racing that we'll see with the low temperatures that are forecasted. It's not going to be a hot and slick kind of track by any means this weekend. And with the new repave, I know, like you said, Austin, they repaved it 2022 as part of that like a COVID stimulus package that they had that went all through a lot of the local tracks in North Carolina. From what I saw, it looks like the racing surface is a little bit like on the verge of getting some of its character back. It doesn't look freshly repaved.
almost like Atlanta.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting. It's almost looking like probably what I imagine Wilkesboro looked like this year, but also Atlanta, where it's not freshly repaved, but it's still got some character to it, and it's that could play a little bit of a factor. I don't expect the tire fall off to be a lot. They don't really have to pit really in this race. So there's that. Also with the low temperatures, that doesn't really make it conducive to a lot of tire fall off.
If anything, they're going to be struggling to get their tires hot.
Yes, that's true. And so I could see maybe 2 or 3 tenths fall off at the most. I could be wrong, and I hope I am wrong on that, but I don't. With the weather forecast and what it's looking like right now, I think you will have to use your bumper a lot because I think it's going to be about even speed for a majority of it. Now, the day racing, I like the last chance qualifier about 6 o'clock. I could see where it might have a little character here and there, a little bit more, just a little bit more slick because I think it's going to be in the 50s or 60s. The tires are just
50s.
Yeah, it's tough to tell because the tires seem like, and I'm no expert whatsoever, but it does seem like the tires are so temperature sensitive these days, and I think that I think that's going to cause a lot of people to have to really beat and bang.
I will say that I know that you mentioned about the paving. Well, you also have to think that this is not just a track where it gets paved and it's not used. This track is constantly being drove on. It's going to be wore out in 2 years because they absolutely drive the crap out of it.
Yeah, and I will say, I don't know if the track will lean more worn because of all the races that are held on it, or if it'll function and lean more on the repave side. If it does lean more on the repave side, it does seem like this car on short tracks or anytime there's a repave, it's not kind of the old school way that we might think, wore out racetrack, tires wear out, makes for better racing. This car does well on repaves, and that could be another factor too. It's going to be interesting to see.
Well, it's going to have more character than LA because
That's true.
They pave LA every year. So this has been, as Cole said, they wear the crap out of this track, I'm sure they do weekly races.
Most of the time,
Yeah.
during the season.
Yeah, so I was trying to go on J-Ski earlier today, but they didn't have the Goodyear notes, or else I'd try to see which specific tire. Now, if they bring the tire, I doubt they will, but if they bring the tire that they ran at Martinsville in the fall, that could have a lot of impact.
For sure.
But if they bring the tire like they did in Martinsville spring, it might not have a lot of impact.
Blake, keep an eye out though, because I think today Xfinity and Truck tested at Rockingham.
They did.
He did. And Lane
So-
Riggs said it was amazing, and he doesn't see why they don't bring a cup race next year to Rockingham.
They might. Who knows? I've heard some room. I mean, obviously, this is more of the main guys kind of talking. I've heard some people think the All-Star race might go to Rockingham and Wilkesboro gets a points race. I would like to see that. I think Wilkesboro would be much better if you had all 36 cars. That's a whole another story for another day. But I am interested. I'll keep a lookout on that, Austin. It'll be interesting to see.
I would also mention that I know that you were talking about tires, but I'll be interested to see how the brakes work with this track, because, I mean, it's wet and you're braking. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how the wear of that's going to work out. That might be the thing that you'll be watching more than the tires, is seeing equipment failures in regards to everything.
Well, I think it's all going to come down to desperation. Do you want it or do you not? And I think that's going to be the biggest factor for the people who are floating around the transfer spots.
Story of my life. All right. Well, I'm going to move on to my segment. And so I'm going to go ahead and just apologize to Austin's friend that listens to the podcast. You can tell, Austin, what's your friend's name?
His name's Brett. That's his name.
Okay. Brett, we tried to make this under an hour, but we went off the deep end a little bit. But hey, at least you get to hear Blake talk a lot. I mean, it might put you in the asylum of insanity, or, you might have learned something.
He'll appreciate the shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll make mine fairly brief. So the fan perspective, there's two sides to this story that I really see. So one side, the fans that want the Clash back at Daytona, they want Speed Weeks. They want the OG original Speed Weeks. That's what they want. And if NASCAR doesn't bring it back to that, they're not going to watch NASCAR anymore.
Boomer.
I swear, if you go on Facebook, the reason I don't really go on Facebook anymore, you go to the comment section on Facebook, that's all you see in regards to the Clash. There's no positive, well, there might be a few, but with the algorithm of Facebook, there is no poster I'm so excited for the Clash. It's why is NASCAR moving away from Daytona? We want Speed Weeks. We want the OG. I ain't going to watch NASCAR till they fix this.
Can I just say what nobody else wants to say? Because the Clash wasn't selling any tickets down there.
I mean, that's fair. Even when they brought it to the road course race, I mean, it was throwing a dart at the dartboard blind. It was a great race.
I mean, to be fair, how many seats are at Daytona though?
Exactly. You're not going to sell out Daytona for a Clash
racing
race.
An Indy,
Yeah.
It's just the Indy seats 200,000. You're just not going to fill that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But I feel like they're fighting against that long-standing tradition of why do they have to move around the Clash, now? Why are we making it for instance, the All-Star race? I love Wilkesboro. I love Bristol. And this is just devil's advocate. This is not me speaking, because I absolutely am happy about the Clash because I'm going to be able to be there. But, I ain't going to be able to go to L.A., I can't afford it, man. I would love to, but I hate seeing it move away from LA from the standpoint of, in regards to the people that do live on that West Coast, maybe live in California, and that's the only race that they can truly attend, and a reasonable, of course you got Sonoma, but it really depends on where you are located on California, because that state is freaking long.
No auto club either. So
Yeah. So from that perspective, I can see it 100%. And that Daytona road course race, me and Blake were there for it, and honestly, I really enjoyed that. That was really fun to watch.
I thought it was a great race.
And I wasn't necessarily surprised when they didn't bring it back. I didn't think, like it was absolutely like astronomically crazy, but it was a good race. And you got to see some beating and banging. You got people moved, but maybe that's where their mind went. It's like they were seeing those moves people were making in the Clash. Are like, you know what? Short track, that's what they like. The beating and banging, that's what we're going to do. And then they moved it to the Coliseum. Now they're moving it to Bowman Gray.
I was talking to a friend of mine at church the other day. We were talking about that, and one of the things I think NASCAR needs to realize is when they've milked a good thing too much. Like the LA Coliseum was dope the first year it happened, because it was new, it was something fresh, and then they did the second year, and it's like, okay, this is not as fun as it was the first time. But now, with Bowman Gray, people are excited because it's a grassroots track. It's new. Same with the Chicago Street Course. First year, great race. Second year, not as good as the first year. So I think NASCAR needs to learn a lesson. And I don't mind the Clash being moved around. I really don't. Move it to some other places. Move it to the Indianapolis Fairgrounds, a great short track as well.
Put it at Eldora. On your track.
I'm all for some dirt racing.
When the new auto club is built, and when we're probably about 50,
that's being generous.
Do it there, because they are making progress. But I think NASCAR needs to learn not to milk it, because that's how you lose the fans' attention. Keep it fresh.
Yep. And see, that's kind of where my complication is. Like, I see that one side, but they're like the long-standing tradition. Like, how dare you get rid of? You're going back to a grassroots track that has deep history. Regionally,
what I'll be interested to see is, yes, the LA part was new, but technically Bowman Gray's not new, and people have still loved it. But will they still love the Clash being there after 2 or 3 years?
It is reaching a new generation, though, because a lot of the fan base, like myself, while we may see the late models race, we haven't seen a Cup car race on Bowman Gray.
True,
that is true.
But that's the thing is, like, I have a hard time, like, saying the older generation and the younger generation, because there is, like, transitional periods in the middle.
Just
like,
say
there's
boomer.
It's not necessarily boomer. Like, it's more or less just, it really depends on what their perspective of NASCAR is and what they enjoy. And I get that.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to see this. I'm a part of the other side of the coin of, I'm really cool. It's really cool to see them getting back to the roots, regionality and everything. And I think that it's the right way to go in regards to contributing to the fan base that you already have. Now, it may not work well in regards to expanding, but then of course you're going to like Chicago and Mexico, and like you're doing stuff that is building up. So
I will say something that they did well, and this is actually something I do think they learned on. With everybody was excited for Wilkesboro to come back, but boy, were those tickets expensive. I mean, we're talking for what it would have been the cheaper seats, like $229 a pop. But now this weekend, it's only $80 to $90 what we paid overall, which is a much better deal than $229 a pop.
And you get a good bang for your buck too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I will say though, like, obviously you're not having like the trucks and the Xfinity cars and the Cup cars all there, because I mean that'd be a logistical nightmare how small the track is. But on top of that, like, that's also a part of why the prices were so high in regards to North Wilkesboro, because it's like a whole package deal. When it first started out, you get all the races, all the practices, one flat rate. So I kind of understand where they were coming from and why this one's different. And also, it's a little bit different event. It's not the All-Star Race. Like, All-Star Race has a prestigious name. Like, people think of, like, amazing races. There's not many people that are like, hey, you remember what happened in the 2006 Clash or the 2015 Clash? You don't hear that, but people remember what happens, the 2018 All-Star Race.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you touched on the price, though, because there is a few things that I like to talk about from going like being there perspective. So number one, this is my biggest gripe in NASCAR in regards to attending races. Why do you make parking so outrageously costly for your consumer? Like, you go to a track like Martinsville, parking's free. And of course, they got a lot of land there. I get it, but that's really, I understand because the demand of like the racetracks and stuff, especially with Bowman Gray, there's not much space. So you're having to park away and then having to be trammed over. But to pay what they are requiring per a day for parking is ridiculous.
It's and they're doing it through Ticketmaster, so you got all the extra fees too. It's about $47, $48 a day just to park in the cheapest area. Now, I recommend if you carpool, you can split that price. That ends up being more like $15 to $17 per person. That's a little bit more effective, but yeah, that's about the only feasible thing to it is if you do carpool and split it. But if you don't, it is really expensive.
It's just, and I think it's ridiculous in general for most tracks. Like, I know Austin knows what I'm thinking about when I mentioned parking. So when I went to the Coke 600 last year, I got there really late because traffic's horrible. If you've ever been to Charlotte, and even like with the Roval's not bad, but like the Coke 600 is terrible.
Last year was exceptionally bad.
And I got there like 10 minutes ago. I was sitting in traffic and I pull off and you got people that are flagging down for parking and it looks like your standard parking. I get down there and they're like, yeah, it's $50. I'm like, you're kidding me. I don't got $50 in cash because no card. So I had to pull up a $100 bill and I just gave it to them. I was like, here, I'm going to the race. Bye. I can't stop by an ATM. But that's really frustrating to me. And I feel like that would be something that NASCAR should really take in perspective for the fan side. And that's just me being vocal of just like my irritation. Now, there's probably people that are like, parking ain't nothing. But like for a person that, looks at their bank account every week and like justifies like, hey, I need to spend this, be able to make it through the month. Paying that extra $45, $50 for parking is ridiculous.
Well, and it's not fantastic parking either. I mean,
no.
I'm sure there's where we're parking over at the Wake Forest football field. It's about 10 minutes from Bowman Gray, and I'm sure if it's like Wilkesboro the first year, they're going to have some really nice tour buses that came, and so I get there's a cost with that. But $90 for a weekend to park is, even if you get to Charlotte at like 1 o'clock, it's not horrible on the price. Usually it's about $20 to $30. It's not great, but it's not terrible. But $90 for a weekend, it is a little bit much on that.
I would like to mention that Kent needs to step away for a minute, and we will take care of his stuff. But I just want to thank him for being on. He's going to walk away, and we'll never hear from him again.
No, never again. No,
Never
I got a
again.
doubt, but I might be back before y'all wrap up. We'll see.
Probably.
But I left. I know. I'm going to come back. Y'all still going to be talking about parking at Bowman Gray, which
Maybe.
is crazy and thinking confusing. But anyways, but no, y'all got my clash picks. I sent them in the group chat. Don't steal them.
Okay.
And left my spicy take for y'all there too, in case you need it. But
Okay.
anyways, I'll hopefully be back. But if not, looking forward to the next episode, fellas.
All right. Sounds good, Kent. Then I would just slight mention to this is the ticket prices weren't too terribly bad. But I swear, like my mind's just thinking about these tickets, and it just gets me more and more tilted as I think about it. Because I spent $40 at Richmond. It's not including parking, but I was carpooling. I spent $40 at Richmond and was able to get a ticket to a cup race and infield passes with a special deal that they had running for $40, where I'm just trying to park for $45 at the Clash.
Yeah, it's a bit hefty, but there's always going to be something like that. I'm happy that they're bringing it back, but it is a bit hefty.
Yeah, but also I'd like to mention that this bringing this to Bowman Gray, this ain't something that was like just happened over the year. Dale Jr. tested in 2021 with the next gen car at Bowman Gray. And the reason they did that is they're like, this is a possibility of doing something. So this hasn't been in the back of NASCAR's mind, like 100%. They don't think in regards to the short term, they're thinking in the large term. So, anyways,
Big brain,
Big Wayne, I got Big Wayne. Not really. But that's kind of just my general side of the fan perspective. And lastly, if you're looking for a really good diecast car from a race win perspective, this car is going to look great because you know there's going to be some tire marks on it. Like there's 100% going to be at least one tire mark on it. And it might look like Eric Jones when he won Daytona. It might be Bear Bond and all kinds of mess whenever they pull in on lap 100 to do their fixes and stuff. So, all right. Well, we're going to get to the old spicy hot takes here. And, Austin, you got your phone on you?
Yeah, what's up?
Pretty close. Could you read Kent's spicy take for us?
Kent spicy take. Spicy.
Spicy.
His
I've
spicy
Steve
take
Owen.
is Tim Brown finishes top 5 in the main event.
Wow.
Okay. All right.
I like it.
That is spicy.
Yeah, I mean, logistically, getting there will be a nightmare, especially being a car that's probably not going to be a top contender on, like, per speed, getting into the heat race where they line up. But if he gets in there, it's very much a possibility. I'm right there with him, but also I'm not there with him at the same time.
Yeah.
All right, Blake, let's hear it.
All right, I'm going to say 2 Gibbs cars do not make the final event.
Do you have a prediction on which 2?
Yeah, let's make it more spicy than that.
In general.
Briscoe won't make it, and
Say Ty Gibbs.
Ty Gibbs will not make it.
Daniel will love that.
Yeah, that's just for you, buddy, if you're listening in.
I don't like the Briscoe pick, personally. I think Briscoe's a fantastic short track driver. He's not, honestly, like, at Stuart Haas, I used to always, like, watch Priest at short tracks because I used to think he was amazing at short tracks. And, of course, the equipment just didn't line up and everything for him. But I feel like, honestly, so remind me, so Ty Gibbs, Denny Hamlin, Chase Briscoe, and who's the other car? There's 4 cars at Joe Gibbs, correct?
Yeah, Briscoe, Gibbs, Hamlin, Bell.
I could see Bell not making it. Like, I could see him wrecking out 100%. This is a possibility.
I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I think
I'm just trying to make it more spicy for you.
Yeah,
Boy
I don't know.
Caliente.
I just
Boy caliente.
Ty Gibbs didn't end the season on a great note last year.
I know.
And don't get me wrong, I think Briscoe will overall do well this year, but I think maybe some growing pains. I don't know if he'll make it in.
Well, my man is being sponsored by NAB, so he'll be all right. I swear, I seen like Lance Crackers. I'm like, why? Like, you need to put NAB on the side of that car. Like, come on, everybody in the South knows what that's called. Those are NABs. I feel like Austin's like, no, they're crackers. Are you a Lance Cracker guy? Is that what you call them?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's the most hottest take you're going to hear. Oh boy. All right.
And get it over with.
Nah, that's your thing, Austin. That's your. All right, Austin, what's your Muy Caliente?
My Muy Caliente is I don't think an RCR car gets into the main event.
I feel like Austin Dillon will definitely make it into the main event.
He didn't last year.
No, but I feel like that win. So, in regards to Richmond, I hate to mention this, but I'm kind of curious, right? So they took the playoff implications away, but the money part, they would get the finances and stuff for that number 1 finish, correct? I feel like they would.
I believe they probably would.
So with that amount of money that they got for that win, they could invest more money in that short track program. And I mean, if that's where their best shots have been, I could most definitely see them spending a little extra money to get, Martinsville, Richmond, the Clash, everything worked out. So
Potentially.
but hey, like you said, it's a spicy take.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to say that Ryan Preece ends up on the podium.
I don't hate it.
I really think that he is due for one. And if you remember, at the LA Coliseum, he was doing absolutely fantastic. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. I think it was last year. He was moving up towards the end of that race. And with this new backer and everything for him, I will be very interested to see what he does. But I think he does get a podium finish. I don't think he wins. And I'm going to save the person that I'm going to pick for who wins, I don't think is going to absolutely kill it, but I think there might be a chance for this guy. Yeah, it's probably going to shock you guys. All right, so that was our spicy tech segment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Blake.
So Kent's got his which order is Kent in the?
We're about to do it.
All right,
we're doing it live.
Nice.
All right, so first we have a dice roller. I don't know why it's got all these, you got D&D 20. All right, 5 times on the random. So I will. Can you see, you guys can see the list randomizer? Just making sure.
Yeah.
All right. So this was the way that the points finished last year. You had Blake on top. You had Austin, then me, and then Kent. So I'm going to hit this list 5 times. This pick'em is just purely for fun. There's you don't see it?
No, just see the dice roll.
Oh, yeah, that's what I see too.
Uh-huh. There, see, Blake lied to me.
There we go.
Oh, I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
Every time. All right, so I'm going to hit randomize 5 times. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm definitely not hitting it. 5. Oh, wow. All right. Well, dang it.
All right, Cole, who's going to win this week?
I hate that I got the first pick, because it's going to make the person I pick seem absolutely ridiculous. But give me SVG. So I watched this man at Martinsville absolutely not have a front to his car about how aggressive he was at the short track. Blake can remember this. He was driving that Wendy's car.
Yeah.
And his front end was messed up within the first few laps. So I think that the man is hungry. He wants a win. He's got to get into it first. But if he gets into the race, I think SVG has a good shot to win.
Okay. Well, I will go with the man who I believe has the hottest paint scheme in Winston-Salem this weekend, and that is Mr. Josh Berry. I believe he will win the Clash. Him and the Wood brothers are going to be a good pairing this year, and he's a good short track racer, and this is going to be up his wheelhouse.
All right, so Kent's next, Austin. What's he got?
He has Logano.
My man wants redemption for what happened at Richmond, so therefore he's going to absolutely just clobber everybody out of the way.
It's not a bad pick, though, because every time they go somewhere new, it does seem like Logano wins. So it's not a bad pick at all.
It's especially if he's given the opportunity to test there first.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why he was so good at Wilkesboro this past year.
True.
All right, my turn.
Yep.
Give me Danny.
Is it Danny's year this year?
I don't know if I'm goals. I don't know about that. But I think when you're looking at the history of Bowman Gray, he's got a history here. He dates all the way back to, I think, '06 racing at Bowman Gray. So he's won here several times. Obviously not Cup car, but he knows. Excuse me. He knows what this track is like, and Denny knows how to run short tracks as well. He can be aggressive enough to get the win. So I think Denny's a solid lock to at least get a podium.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, the way that this works is it's not necessarily who wins the race, it's whoever finishes the highest. That's good to know because, we could have all our drivers be in the 30s. But
we literally have had a race in this competition where it was the Coke 600. It was before Cole joined, but I had picked Denny. Kent had picked Chase for that infamous wreck 2 years ago, and both of us were done. But somehow or another, I was a lap down less than Kent, and so I won. But Blake got the win because they both totaled their cars.
gonna be great.
Yeah, fun stuff.
All right. So next week's agenda, I got 3 words written down. Well, 2 words and 1 number. It's the Daytona 500, baby. So we're gonna be hyping you guys up. We're gonna be telling you all the storylines and stuff coming out of the Clash, and also all the interesting stuff that's come up here in the last little bit, especially with a particular ride at RWR, Rickware Racing. So we will make sure to mention that. So just a few things before we head off here. And this episode is a lot longer. I would apologize, but I mean, we're having a good time with it. So
sorry, Brett.
Yeah. It gets 2 shouts outs on the same episode. I think he'll be all right.
Man, that's a lucky guy.
Yeah. But number 1, if you're enjoying the podcast, whatever platform you're listening to, make sure you leave a rating. And of course, we have all the social medias at 4WidePod. You guys can tweet at us. What do you call it when you Instagram somebody?
You direct message.
Or you post it on your story.
Yeah, repost on your story.
Yeah.
Like, direct message would be like sliding into the DMs kind of deal.
Direct message us if you're interested in sponsorship.
If you're single, DM because Cole's,
Thanks. Appreciate it. Appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate it. The only person that's not married. But just make sure to leave that rating for us, because not only does it show us that you're appreciating the show a little bit, like 0.1%, but on addition to that, it boosts us up in the algorithm. That way that we can also just keep moving up in regards to the NASCAR podcast, because we want to reach out to more fans, ultimately. And that's basically it. If you guys have anything else to say, go right ahead. Otherwise, we're going to head off.
We'll see y'all after the Clash. Happy
boogity.
Happy race week.
Boogity boogity, frickers.
Welcome back, Welcome back, NASCAR. I can't.
Hey, it's 11-11.
Make a wish. Austin Dillon wins.
And on that note, have a good night.
Adios. Goodbye.